Welcome to Rapture Recovery, Big Book Step Study Program of Action. We are going to start into action, which is going to be your fifth step, and you are going to read to page 75. What you're going to do is you're going to highlight, circle. You're going to see there's going to be a lot of repetitive and encouraging information here. This has taken a lot of work to actually get where we are right now. On this page of the workbook, our activity is going to happen before our discussion questions because it rolls right over into action. We've seen so far that we have put a lot of work in place to get where we are right now. We started in the preface. They celebrate the consistency of this program throughout its existence with the literature and the fellowship. Then we hit the forward to the first edition, understanding why it is so important for us to be anonymous. And now we're seeing how much work we're actually doing in our program. We're starting to value that anonymity a little bit more, right? Because the more anonymous you are, the more God is going to use you to work with other people and who value their anonymity. So when I say all the time, I don't break my anonymity purposefully because I want to guard the anonymity of my sponsees and all the people that I support. Therefore, when we're out in the real world, they're not scared to associate with me. I'm not like the big alcoholic on Facebook or the big alcoholic on Instagram. I am literally working in a spiritual realm. We also, in the forward to first edition, did an action item and did a gratitude on our past spiritual experience, since they're telling us over and over that the solution to our disease is a spiritual experience. So we need to leave the wreckage of the past in the past and take what good from it we can. Then we went over to the doctor's opinion that validated that we are an alcoholic. We went through and did our drinking inventory, which has been the building block for all of this work that you've done so far. You may not realize it, but there is a method to the madness. Then we went over to Bill's story. We hear someone else's experience, strength, and hope, and not just someone else, the founder of this thing. And then we did an unmanageability chart, which again is kind of setting us up for this fourth step. We also did a friends inventory when we read Bill's story because we saw how it is a disease of relationships. Then we went over to there's a solution, and they're kind of setting you up for your program of action, making you realize that you're going to need to make some goals around meetings, making you realize that you're going to have to protect your sobriety. So you're going to have to stay in sober environments. You're going to have to reach out to other alcoholics. This is a we program. It's not a me program. So we need to find the we, and we need to make our sobriety a priority. Then, just when we think we're done, we go over to more about alcoholism. We understand what our alcoholism journey may or may not have looked like. We understand that there is an obsession of the mind. We understand what our behavior, one of my favorites, the jaywalker, may look like to other people. Therefore, there may be some consequences of our behavior in some of our relationships. Then we wrapped up step one. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives were unmanageable. Then we went to we agnostics. We hit step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We talked about who our God's going to be, who he is, and what are some positive attributes about him. Then we went to step three. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So we've created God we understood in step three. We're turning our will over by using that third step prayer and inserting all of our difficulties that we listed over in We Agnostics in the bedevilments. So you see how we are progressing with this workbook. Then we're in our step 4 inventory, where we're understanding that liquor is but a symptom. We're understanding that moments of triumph are short-lived, that our why to our drinking is our resentments. So we start with our charts here, and you've done a lot of work here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to celebrate that work now. You're going to find your sponsor, your friend that you're doing this with, or somebody else in the program that has more time than you, and you are going to think about how you're going to process this. Now, being that I've done step work with over 40 women, it can get very, very exciting. But never in any of my experiences have I had somebody have a bad experience with a fifth step. ever, ever. It is a trusted time of fellowship where you will be sharing all of this with someone else. And when you do that, they are going to give you the freedom to share this. There's not going to be a lot of input, opinions. We are instructed to actually just listen and to support you. And we are only advised to stay on our side of the street and share our experience, strength, and hope. So if someone shares something with me and I have something similar, I will say, oh, that happened to me. And so it's not all one way, but I don't overtake the fifth step. That's like a 30-second share. But also when you're listening to the fifth step, because of the program that I've worked, I have a multitude of resources of people in the program. So when someone's sharing with me in something in confidence, I'm not going to run and tell anyone, but I'm going to tell that sponsee, so-and-so dealt with this. We start putting a design for living in place. If these ugly things rear their heads, we are in a program of women who are going to support and conquer our earthly problems, believe it or not, because God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. He's pretty much saying, I'm going to pull all of you together, and some of you are going to be professionals. Some of you are not going to be professionals, but the ones who are professionals are not going to have any problem hearing me call them to help people who can't help themselves. And that is a spiritual experience. Then we spent some time just kind of reviewing our 4-step, asking the questions that I had listed on that page of the workbook, sitting in that, thinking about what our future ideals were going to be. And now here we are at our 5th step. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Have we the capacity to be honest? Did you use these workbook pages to do some preface work here? Have you reached out while you were doing your workbook pages and talk to people about this? So this isn't the first time you've ever shared anything with anybody. Are we willing to let this go? Absolutely. Because we remember that half measures availed us nothing. So what we're going to do is when we start on our 5th step, you're going to start reading into action, okay? And you're going to go all the way through page 75. And we're different from when this book was being written, right? Because our fellowship is so huge. The fellowship itself has created this sponsor tree and all this, business. But back then, they're even telling you can do this with a trusted friend. Now, why would they tell you this? Because this is about you. This isn't about dumping all your problems in someone else's lap and asking them to solve them. This is solely about you. So when you turn to your worksheet on into action, you're going to see the first exercise. And so this is your discussion. You may want to get your 4th step, and you may want to meet with your accountability partner or your group, and you may want to go through these questions together. And especially if it's somebody who knows you, they may be able to help you out here, right? Review your inventory. So take a look at it and think to yourself, is there anything I'm leaving out? Because on page 72, it says, time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods, almost invariably getting drunk. So again, this is why it's important to constantly be doing your step work, because the more 4 steps you do, the more things God reveals to you. Because remember the example in the 4th step and how it works. It was really just 24, 48-hour situations. It wasn't childhood drama, But again, we're alcoholics, so we will actually relapse over anything. So you really need to sit in this and have a quiet time and think, am I leaving anything out? And God will always bring something else to the front. I did this before I felt caged and trapped, right? Before I ever did a 4th step, I felt like I've been going to psychiatrists, therapists, family members, and friends, and I was always giving them half-truths. I had never written all this down, but after I wrote it all down, I did feel a sense of freedom that it was just all in one place. So no matter where I go, do I go to therapy, psychiatrist, any outside resources, I have a foundation of facts to bring them, right? And sometimes the facts are my environment facts facts that I constantly leave out because my disease of alcoholism loves to use them as resentments. So you are literally gearing yourself up for a design of living that you have never had before. So no matter where I go to sponsor work, sponsee work, therapist, psychiatrist, if I put myself in group environments, I can identify triggers at a much quicker rate because I've journaled all of this down. The second part of the exercise is focus on your 24 hours and who is there. Make sure to include every current situation on your inventory. So you really need to think about that because people leave out. I will have sponsees that call me every other day about a roommate or call me every other day about a ex-boyfriend. And those people will not make it on their inventory. Now, you tell me why that happens. Did they not spend enough time sitting in the 30 minutes? If you do 30 minutes a day for 7 days, that's 3.5 hours. Like at some point, if this is the topic that you're bringing to me every single time, it should make it on the 4th step, okay? And whenever I'm doing 4 steps with people, we are always adding to the 5th steps. We are always adding to the 4 steps, right? There'll be a situation, they'll tell me a story, and they'll give me another name, and at the end of the 5th step, that other name never made it on there, right? But again, this is why we are looking for progress, not for perfection. This is why you are always going to be able to do a 4th step, right? We are very dynamic people. We are actually resentful at a lot of things. So, different institutions, places, they're going to trigger you and you're going to be like, wait, that triggered me, but this happened to me in my childhood. Oh, this, can go on a 10th step or next 4th step. So, okay, what did I leave out? I left out AA, and I left out certain people in AA that were really getting on my nerves. You see how that worked? I mean, I was like, wait a minute. I was kind of resentful at the fact that I had to come to AA. And there are a couple key people in my meetings that really don't like me. And so I'm resentful that I'm not feeling acceptance from these people. And it really, what that is a personality conflict. And we have to learn to get rid of those because everyone's not going to like you and everybody's not going to invite you to everything. There are going to be plenty of coffees and dinners that you don't get invited to because they literally can't invite the world. And when you're part of a secret, anonymous community like this, it's very large. So once you start inviting people to places, you're like, yeah, they're right. Like you really can't invite everybody to everything. Let's see, my thoughts and realizations. I don't want to sit in a victim state anymore. So I'm going to start looking for gratitude to these people in the program. But exercise 3, schedule your 5th step. So you're going to need to schedule, I would say 1 to 3 hours. This is my experience. Anything that lasts over 3 hours, anything that lasts over 3 hours has diversions in it. It's got a lot of diversions in it. The amount of writing that would be required to take over 3 hours would not be following what is in line with the big book. It would not be following in line with the columns. There would be way too many details, and details are a diversion from source problems. I have one time and one time only stopped a 5th step just because the sponsee, due to a lack of knowledge, had literally written out every single time they had done this one offense. There were different institutions involved, but it was the same pattern over and over and over again, right? And we are going to sin no more. We are after the pattern, right? So we can go after a source problem. But that's really, I have done so many. Every single one is a spiritual experience. A lot of people light a candle. It's a great idea because it represents that God is there. Into action on this 5th step, they're talking about psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but a few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth nor have followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we are honest with no one else. Small wonders the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. So we must. Now, there are a lot of studies that get all excited when they see a must. So highlight it, circle it, put a glitter star around it. Be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. What else you're doing here is you're shortchanging your problems forever. By doing a fifth step with somebody and understanding that you're in a spiritual realm and understanding that they're probably not going to remember every single detail, but they'll remember those details whenever they need to. You are going to have somebody that you can call with a problem about a person, and they're already going to know who the person is. I mean, you are literally cheating the gossip ring. I mean, you are literally a conversation that would take 1 hour with an individual to give them all the backstory. You've got a sponsor that has the entire backstory. So we're going to work through all these relationships through an 8 and a 9. So there are going to be a lot of connecting points with you and your sponsor or your trusted person. And we're just shortchanging problems, which is a spiritual experience. A lot of people also say about your fifth step, you have to start out and say, I'm engaged on a life and death errand because of what we have just said. And that's on page 75, right there in the first full paragraph. Most people approach in a way will be glad to help. They will be honored. We had to say that because we had to convince maybe somebody who wasn't a sponsor that we needed to just tell one person all of this information. Then we also see, and again, I want you to read. So go read, go highlight the promises. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears will fall from us. Maybe that's because somebody else knows everything now. I don't know. God does. We begin to feel the nearness to our Creator because God got me here. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. For me, I'm not alone anymore, right? There is someone who understands everything that I've gone through. The feeling of the drink problem will disappear, will often come strongly. And you have like some built-in accountability. If we went into the psychology of this fifth step, I don't think that you could charge for this, because it is priceless. It is priceless. It is my privilege to be able to do fifth steps with people. At one of the treatment centers I went to, they could not graduate till they did a fifth step. And I was under a lot of old timers that were giving me a lot of feedback on me working in this treatment facility. And one of the reasons is I was having to do step work in a different manner because I was having to work with the treatment facility. I understood what the treatment facility was doing with the big book and all this, and what the treatment facility's requirements were of the girls and things of that nature. So I started calling it drive-by sponsoring. Just drive through sponsoring. Like we're going to the McDonald's version of step work because my time is so limited with these girls for external physical reasons. Okay. I think God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. I kind of went back to my Ebby Thatcher, experience. God is everything or God is nothing. And if these girls need for me to do a fifth step with them and I haven't done any step work with them because of a lack of access, who am I not to do the fifth step? So I came up again during that time with a very short 1 through 4 step study, right? And that was encouraging, right? I don't know if anybody had ever done that before, but it was definitely meeting a need. I would require for us to meet for 1 hour before the actual fifth step, and it would have to be on a different week. So I would have to drive out to the treatment facility, meet with them for 1 hour, give them some work to do, help them finish up their writing on their fifth step that the facility was having them write. And then we would meet for a fifth step at another time. But one of the big things was whenever we were done with the fifth step was, to take the book down from the shelf and spend an hour, right? Just kind of going over all of this information and reviewing the first 5 steps. And I saw so much magic in the reviewing, verbally discussing those first 5 steps. And, God is in every step. He really is. Some people claim some are God's steps and some aren't, but He's in every step and He uses everything. So this week, try to find somebody, a sponsor or your partner that you're doing this with. I would not advise to do a group fifth step because it would take way too long. If you've got a whole bunch of time in sobriety, I think it's time to even dig deeper, right? Can I spend an hour a day, right? Being in our sobriety journey program, you've created some resentments. It's not like we're automatically healed and we are a spiritual being ourselves. We are, but we're still in a journey of living in this realm, which there's a lot of trials and tribulations, and there are a lot of things that happen in our sobriety journeys as well. And so it's really exciting that you're taking the time to invest in your program this week and do a fifth step with somebody else. And how fun is that? If there are two of you that are doing this activity together, one can do it and then the other can do it. I mean, that's kind of awesome in my mind. Again, if you've got a lot of time, it should probably be limited. So you could probably get together for 2 hours and touch on all of it and talk about connecting two spiritual journeys that happen later on in sobriety instead of just in the beginning. So that's the benefit of always being in step work and always being open to do fifth steps. It's so funny, if I have had to get a new sponsor a couple times just because my sponsors have gone to do other things like jobs and they just can't meet them at meetings. They'll be like, oh, you don't need to do a fourth and a fifth step. You've already done them. And I'm like, oh, no, we're doing it. Like, we're actually going to do it. So thank you so much for listening.